Hi guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another episode of Food Exposed. Food Exposed is a series of episodes where we're looking at the quality of food we currently have in our supermarkets. We're looking at the labels and legislations and the loopholes, and hopefully in turn we can make a better decision when we come to spend our hard-earned cash. So in today's episode, guys, we're going to be looking at meat. And the reason I've chosen meat today, well, we're currently going through the cost of living crisis, and the price of meat actually doubled since the same time last year. We're talking about mostly the chicken and beef, but unfortunately the quality, of course, have not improved. So we all might be familiar, guys, when you pick up a chicken breast, it's a rather sizable, and they put this in the oven or in the frying pan, and then when it's cooked, you take this out, it's pretty much less than halved in a size, and it's something really tiny, and it just sits there in a pool of water. To some of you might be, it's a natural thing, meat shrinks, absolutely, but believe this or not, the majority of the chicken is now sitting on the shelves amongst other meat as well, is actually injected with water for no any other reason, just the pure profiteering alone. The old days, they used to inject the saline solution into the meat to make it last longer, but now we do have a processes to make sure when the meat is packaged, it does last for quite a while. So now anything but the profit the company wants to make. So believe this or not, guys, on average, the average pack of chicken potentially could have between 15 and 30% of water. This is horrendous amount considering you'll be paying pretty much £2 per chicken breast. Just imagine 30% of water that just escapes when you come to cook your chicken. And this is again the reason, as I said to you, in the end of the cooking process, your chicken will sit in a lot of water. And this is absolutely horrendous. And again, guys, once more time, the reason I'm doing this, and I want you to understand, yes, those processes have been gradually introduced and done over the long period of time, but now it is absolutely horrendous. And I want to make sure that when you do come to choose your chicken breast or chicken pieces, that you have to check the labels, because it will have to tell you. But we'll come back to the labeling at the end of the video. So next thing, guys, we're talking about is a beef and pork actually gassed with carbon monoxide to make sure that your beef and pork keep that really nice rosy color. In fact, okay, it's for some reason become somewhat a misconception, and it's something that we've been made to believe by the powers of be, that your meat have to be bright red. Yet going into the old days, when the meat has been natural, it does come in a slightly different shade. So for some reason, again, we've been drummed into ourselves that the meat have to be bright red. So the reason now they're doing this with carbon monoxide to basically make sure that your meat stays redder for longer. Again, if you dive into the whole idea, this is there for no more than just deceiving like yourselves and myself when you come to buy this, because in many places, again, I'm not saying where, but generally, okay, if the meat stays redder for longer, they will kind of disguise the normal change of color when the meat gets older, if you see what I'm saying. So when you look at a piece of red meat, you automatically assume this is very fresh, freshly cut, freshly packaged. In fact, it doesn't necessarily mean that at all. It all just means it's been soaked with the carbon monoxide to make sure it stays redder for longer. Next thing is, when we're talking about the processed meats, let's talk about the cheaper burgers, sausages, and even mincemeat. Again, you'll think, well, we know what it comes from, you know what's in there, especially, you know, mincemeat. You think, yes, is a ground beef, anything, and well, just ground beef. But in fact, again, all of those, or majority of those cheaper products are actually diluted with what we call a pink slime. And the pink slime is basically a sludge of connective tissue, bones, skin, and the meat offcuts that actually then treated with the ammonia, blended into the puree, if I say so, and then mixed in to your burgers, sausages, and even mincemeat. This is all done again, guys, pretty much to bulk up the product with the products or things, ingredients that should be going in the bin. And at the end of the day, guys, when we seemingly buy ourselves, say, a mincemeat, I would assume mincemeat to be just a ground beef, not including all the other things in there. But again, guys, this is where the importance comes of checking the labels and actually understanding what's in them. So now, right, let's have a look about the laws and legislations. When we're talking about, and my main pet hate, guys, as you know, is the lack of transparency on the labels and of course the loopholes. Of course, not a single packaged product in UK would not have a loophole. So talking about the legislations, let's talking about the water injected meat. So, okay, in the UK and EU, it's technically allowed by law as long as the water is declared on a label. So for example, chicken breast 85%, 15% water and salt. Again, I've seen this, now I know it. You can see this, it is visible on majority of the products. So because again, right, because it's listed as an ingredient, okay, so regulators treat this like a recipe rather than a scam. Okay, even we know that the reason they do this purely to make extra money and deceive us, okay, the regulators treat this as an ingredient. I would like to know since when water becomes an ingredient in a piece of meat that comes from an animal. It's just the chicken breast, you take a chicken, you cut it apart and you butcher it and you have parts of the chicken. Since when does the water become an ingredient? Okay, see, that's the point. The water is in the meat, we understand, small percentage, but, okay, this is the legislations and this is allowed. So it's not always clear. That's the thing with the labels, guys. They don't always make it very clear. Sometimes really, really tiny and, there's a lot of text sometimes on the label, so it makes it hard. So anyway, so the 15% rule. So up to 15% of the weight of certain meats can legally be water or brine solution. So originally, as I said, guys, this is started as a safety practice long time ago. Now it's anything but just to make an extra money. So, right, just to give you a blunt example. So a 1 kilogram pack of chicken could contain up to 150 grams of water. And again, it might sound to you like not a lot if you actually pour yourself 150 ml of water in a glass and say, well, actually, it's just not a big deal. It's natural water. But you're paying a horrendous price of the chicken per kilo. So if you imagine 150 grams, you might be talking about, good 2, 3, even more pounds, depending of something you're paying for is actually water. So now again, so the UK and EU labeling laws. So under EU regulations, right, that if the meat contains more than 5% added water, it must be labeled clearly with the word added water, like I mentioned earlier. But there are loopholes. So again, if the water is a part of marinade, okay, companies can often argue that this is part of the recipe again, instead of just added water. So in fact, in some of the cases, if it's been brined, they don't even have to add this because it's technically no longer water and is a part of the recipe. So they are somewhat similar between the first and the second one I mentioned, but you get the idea. Okay, you get the idea that this part of the recipe and part of the process, like we talked about the bread, the things that add on, because they literally call this part of the process. Well, process of what? Butchering the chicken or butchering the meat suddenly becomes an ingredient. Brine. Why do we brine chicken? You don't brine the chicken. You don't have to brine the chicken. Their job is to deliver you a pure chicken breast. Well, in fact, rather than it being brined in whatever solution and salt that they fill, but the point is, guys, this is happening. So there we are. This is just a vague idea. And the reason, right, I brought this out to this video today specifically because only yesterday I've cooked myself some chicken and I was appalled again by the certain size of that. And again, guys, once more time, I do say we are fully aware that there have been water injected and certain other things injected in different meats, which we'll talk about in a different video. I totally understand. We know this, but it feels like it's getting worse. So basically what we're now paying for, as I said to you, decent chicken breast, you can buy a packet of chicken breast for almost £10. Then it means like £1.50 of that would be potentially water weight, if not even more. So I just wanted you to make sure that you are aware of those practices. So when you do spend your money, because meat is expensive, you can make a better choice. And of course, the choice you can do, or the reason how you can make a better choice, of course, is checking the labels. This is my thing to you all the time. I say, make sure you read the labels, not just like the back of this, read the side, read the front, whatever the labels are in a small print, read it. Because as I said, majority of the times they do put added water. And I remember, just quite a long time ago, I looked at a pack of chicken and it says that the water and salt, and it was like 15%. And I'm like thinking to myself, why is there water in my chicken? And this is before I knew, obviously, the whole thing that's happening in our food industry. But I'm like, why? Why there need to be water in my meat? It's meat. It's there. You chop it, you cut it. It's there. But there we are. Anyway, whinge over, guys. Yes, please make sure you check your labels. Make sure if you do spend your money on meat, it actually goes into a decent meat. And again, Obviously, the suggestion is if you do have a local butcher, then obviously do go and buy from them if possible. I know they're quite a bit more expensive if you've got one, but at the same time, maybe worth checking with them where the meats come from, because I know for fact that not all butchers are supplying a local meat, and this is from experience here. So anyway, guys, well, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please don't forget, maybe share the video, just spread the awareness. Make sure that if we do spend money, we spend it on meat and not water. Don't forget, thumbs up, it really does help the channel. And thank you for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye bye.